The wee bit of blurb that Jess put out about me kind of introduces myself. My name's Claire, and I've been a teacher for what seems like a long time now, 26 years, and I spent most of that time in the additional support needs sector. And as well as that, then as part of my remit, then I've been responsible for chaplaincy in different stages in different schools and so on, and worked with chaplaincy teams and chaplains from different denominations and different churches. And I've also been involved within the Roman Catholic Church within their education department in the adapting materials for their education programmes. So I've been involved in developing workbooks, and I continue to support the education team in Motherwell with adapting materials, and also we have regular kind of meetings and prayer sessions and so on. So, but everything's always a learning. I'm keen to learn from you guys as well, and most importantly, the people that you work with and support. They teach you new things all the time. So, one of the things then to get us started is just about how we prepare ourselves, and one of the things to really be conscious about, you may already do this, but particularly when you're working with children with additional support needs, that they will pick up on your body language, your stresses, and maybe a wee bit more sensitive with things in other circumstances. It's about really getting yourself prepared and being able to keep yourself calm as possible, be able to deal with things. So and also as we start any kind of meeting, any kind of prayer service, or any kind of, any kind of lesson, if I was doing a lesson in school, we would start with a regular music signifier to let us know this is going to be a special prayerful time. And I know, Jess, we have got one, and we've got a wee piece of Tazy music, which we're going to try to play. It's just a simple, "O Lord, hear my prayer," which hopefully will start to bring you into that kind of sense of the special time that we're in. Thanks, Jess. So I've chosen just a short passage for you. Jesus said, "A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you're my disciple, if you love one another." Lord, may we be open to your loving message to us this evening, and we may take that message, that message of love to those we encounter in our communities. Amen. Okay. To wait for the hands coming up. So already said welcome to you all today, and most welcome those of you who are managing to join us as we're going along. And the next slide is the prayer slide, Jess, so we kind of pass this. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was relationships and extending the hand of friendship. You'll notice that I've used some consistent symbols that we use in our educational sector, and you might see them out in other areas. And these are things that I'll come on to a wee bit later when we're talking about communication. But just as I was saying in the introduction there about relationships, it starts with yourself and how you're feeling, and your openness as well to welcoming people, which I'm sure that you already think that way because you're here tonight, and because of the work that you're all doing in churches at the moment. And it's really important to be thinking about how you can build relationships and welcome people as they come to your church or to your church group or whatever setting it is. So for people with children with additional support needs, they will always be coming with an adult. It may be their family member, it may be their carer. And as someone who has taken children out to churches or to other situations, it can be quite a stressful time for you as a carer, as a supporter as well, going out to places. So it really helps, again, it's always the case that you get a friendly welcome, but it really helps as well if the people who you're seeing in the church or welcoming into your church are relaxed and understanding of the different ways that children with additional support needs might express how they're feeling, or how they might be in the church when they're there. So what my suggestion to you then is just to be as welcome, as friendly as I'm sure as you always are, and also to check in with family members who are supporting them or carers who are with them, and to find out ways that you can help if necessary, find out ways about communication, find out ways that that might trigger someone to get upset, whether it's lighting, whether it's something environmental, and what kind of ways it might help that child within that. Does that seem? It seemed to get a few nods of the head, so we kind of probably recognising that as well. So you're thinking about welcoming not just the child with additional support needs, but the adult that comes with them, and how they can feel part of your church, part of your community, or part of your group, whatever it is you're leading. One of the things that we were, quite proactive in one of the schools where, as a chap, we was involved in the chaplaincy team, was looking at being able to involve the children and the young people in the church within their community. Lots of schools have a connection with a church which is quite near to them, but really we were kind of looking at the churches that were within their community that they maybe attended regularly with their family. And in some cases, families wanted to be able to feel comfortable with going to their local church, so that helped them as well, and to kind of help everyone to kind of feel comfortable at going to church, and also about the people in the church, about any support we could give them. And it really is about listening to people about what their preferences are, what they like, what their interests are, and what responsibilities they may be looking for within their church. One of the, I think, Jess, we've got a few photos then of some examples of children and young people being involved in the ministry. So this is a young girl, Cara, who, this was obviously a church that she went to regularly with her mum, and she was involved in quite a lot of things, not just in different parts of the service and having a role in that. She was also involved in passkeeper duties as well. But her family, were very active, and then also her mother was very supportive as well. And the people in that community were well used to Cara being involved in their church. And the next one, so this was a group that we had who regularly visited our local church, and not just visited or attended services, but just as we're saying, were involved in different aspects of a service or a liturgy, maybe had roles of saying a prayer, or a reading, or helping, as they say, with different parts of the offertory, or giving out kind of leaflets and so on. This church regularly had coffee mornings, and this just looks like quite sociable, doesn't it? Sitting having cake and coffees. But I think it came at the end of I think it was an end of term celebration. It came at the end of quite an involvement in a celebration of how the children had worked together with the people within the community. And just as I was kind of saying as well, about getting involved in the church ministry and listening to the young people about what they would like to do and how they could be involved. So this young lad, Liam, obviously his desire had been to be an altar server, just like his friends. He had to wait till he was about 16 before we were able to arrange that. And this is him getting his training, having tried on his outfits and so on. He's getting put through his paces as a trainer. And you'll see, I think the next slide, Jess, yeah, you'll see him there. He's involved in the. This is also part of his training. And this, when I looked at this, I couldn't believe the date, and this was 2013, which seems ages away in some ways. But this young man is still involved in his church. So what we started in school has continued within his local church, his local parish that he attended regularly. So we kind of think there's no limits to what we can do, and we always find ways to support people to feel involved. This group here then, this is them, as I say, leading prayers. Some of the children who are in this group are non-verbal children, so they'll be using signing, or they may have some sort of visuals or cues to help them with along with there. But this was a group who were involved in the chaplaincy group in the school, and some of them also came along to our Scripture Union, our Good News Club group as well. So we took opportunities for them to be able to share with the rest of the community some of the things that they had been learning. Yep, and as I say, thinking of things that anyone who wants to be involved can be involved in it. So this was a closely supervised preparing the Advent brief, because the lady who usually did the Advent brief, and I'm a bit like that myself, it has to be done a certain way, so it was closely supervised to help. But you can see they're doing a fine job there of getting the ribbons organised and putting together the branches and so on. And I'm sure you can think of other examples yourself of things that may be possible. In fact, that's us got to that wee bit there. So yeah, that's fine, Jess, sorry, discussion part. So just a wee break just now then, or a wee bit of reflection in your breakout rooms about sharing your experiences of welcome others. What do you think works well? What would you like to change? But basically kind of sharing other ideas that you may have, that, you know, things that I put up there, but you might have other ideas or things that have worked very well for you. Okay.
If we had people coming in that weren't usually had an issue, like maybe with autism and things like that, and how do you know, how do you approach people in the first place, wasn't it, Julie? I think you said it's like how do you make that first leap of conversation, and we were discussing ways of welcoming people into church buildings and things, and I thought the best thing was Mary Jane had the idea of a welcome pack at the door, and maybe had macro signs in and things like that. And she said the Boys Brigade have a website where there's some really useful information.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Lots to come out of it, see? It was scribbling
Yes.
furiously.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's brilliant. That sounds like a good meeting.
Yes.
Anybody else have any thoughts they'd like to share? Nope, they're all good, all happy.
Oh, sorry.
Go on, David.
No, sorry, just for my group, I did this check there. Again, we're talking about the Boys Brigade, but there is actually a space in the enrolment form for additional support needs. So I thought there was, but I couldn't remember. I've just double checked it. So I wasn't looking strangely at my camera. I was actually looking.
Yeah.
Okay, so I shall go back to sharing the screen then, Claire, if you're ready.
Great. Yeah, so this probably moving on from the comment about, you know, welcoming someone in and how, you know, how you can approach that. And this is, you know, this is the kind of thing that to think about, is creating a safe environment or secure environment. And one kind of caveat I will give to that is that you can't always second guess everything. You might think things through, you might try things, and sometimes the child might get distressed over something you hadn't thought about. I'm saying that as someone who's been in the sector for such a long time, that you've got to be prepared that you can think of lots of things, but again, kind of tune into what the child or the adults saying. If you're thinking within your church or within a group or within a prayer group, thinking about setting up what I would call a sacred space. And as I said at the beginning, then setting up your sacred space, you would use different kinds of what we would call signifiers. So that kind of music, if you might have your own choice of music, I'm sure you will have your own choice of music actually. A wee bit of music that lets people know, or lets this child know, this is our prayer time, this is our safe time. Sometimes an object as well helps. And I've got a wee picture, but not onto that yet. I've got something like this. This is, you might have seen these in the shops and so on. This is just a small wooden painted cross, but something tactile that the child could hold. These ones, I'm sure, I should say Amazon, but maybe we're not into Amazon, but I'm sure you can get them in places like that. And the good thing about this is that it's robust-ish, you know, it's not going to get easily broken, but it's also easily replaceable. Think about if you're using something to let a child know this is a prayer time, or this is church, or this is our group time. Think of something that you might need to be able to have to replace, and if it can get replaced quite easily. But when you come into the church then as well, some of the things, or I guess, sorry, your group or community space that you're working in, some of the things to think about are the sites in the church, because, you know, if a child is visually sensitive, not just visually impaired, but it's, you know, someone was saying if someone has autism or is a sensory impairment, and that visually they can be quite disturbed, thinking about the lighting, thinking about perhaps sometimes a child or someone might get too scared if it's really, you know, if it's a darker place, kind of thinking about that. Sounds, it can be really unpredictable at times and quite distressing. One of the children in a group that was taken to church last year, they were okay whenever there were two kind of stations for reading and prayers and so on, so they were okay whenever someone was reading at one stage with the microphone, it was okay. But for whatever reason, when someone was reading and it was coming across this other microphone, they were getting really distressed. Obviously the sound, whatever was needing fixed with that sound and that microphone was really disturbing them, and they got really, really upset by that. So that can help, that can be an issue. Sometimes the sense in a church, you know, there's something quite, for me, I think there's something quite comforting about the sense of a church, that smell of the wooden pews and so on. And some of the things that you might use, you know, we're talking about flowers there, or perfumes or air fresheners and things like that, may be something that they'll associate with you, maybe something that kind of upsets them. And touch and taste and things like that might be things that you have or things that you might be using, but these are all things that can affect a child, particularly a child with autism and their sensory system, and it may affect their ability to be able to engage with everything. So think about a safe space is what I would call it, or a sacred space. I'm kind of mixing my words about, but I think you can realise it's, we want to maybe think about it as a special place where they might feel secure. It may be a wee alcove within your church. It may be a certain side of the church. It might be somewhere that's a bit less quiet, a bit less noisy, somewhere that's not, there's not so much stimulation there. And sometimes having some nice blankets or something comfortable, as opposed to the, you know, if you've got wooden benches or chairs or whatever, it might be easier for that child to be able to sit. And I'm sure these are all considerations you have when you're working with children anyway. But on the other side of that, I was quite fascinated a few years ago by a child with autism who went to church, wasn't a regular churchgoer, but we had a service in the church. And when we came out, she said, I really love that place because it's so clean, because she just loved the fact that there's all these neat rows of benches, and, you know, and it was all kind of ordered. And some children, again, they like the fact there's quite a routine, there's quite a consistent routine when they go to church as well. So lots of these things to think about, as I said, are things that you get to know as you build relationships, but also, you know, you've got in your back of your head that might be something that you might be able to help someone as they're coming in. Anything they can think about. I think I've got a few wee photos, Jess, of some things. So this is a sacred space. I think I said to Jess that my mother would be happy because I've taken that photo and I didn't iron that piece of white cloth, but I think when I was in school, we were setting up sacred space or we were setting up a prayer time, that these kind of things could be kept in a box and safely brought out and involve the children in setting up this place. So putting on a white cloth on the table might indicate, you know, that it's something special. A book of significance, obviously I've got the Bible there, and for a younger child you've got lots of, I'm sure you know yourself, you've got lots of examples of children's books which are a bit more robust with pictures and so on, that might be a bit more accessible to them. And I've used a battery candle there for obvious reasons, and the iPod for music. And then the next one, Jess, is next slide. It's just one that I've put in with a seasonal kind of thought about it. This was done for Lent. I feel as if I've thrown everything in there, because I've got the purple for Lent and I've got this out of the Palm for Palm Sunday, and I've got the wee charity walks for charity for Lent. But that was just obviously over a number of weeks when we maybe talked about different things that we do during that seasonal time. There's lots of other things to think about as well, you know, like even we've used sometimes just using different coloured ribbons for different seasons, if that's something that you would do in your church as well. If you want to think about different times, things for Christmas, things for Easter, to show that things are a wee bit different and we're kind of going through a different season of the year. I think that's, yep, for some reason I've got a real candle in that one. I must have been feeling brave. So this photo here, having said all that about setting it all up for some sombre prayer and and setting for quiet time and putting the music on and for people to be able to sit and realise it's reverence. You can see in this slide here that obviously something happened that was really funny. I'm not really sure what part of the story or possibly what passage we were reading there. But it is just, as you all know, it's just a lovely time as well. You can set it all up, have your prayerful time, but you're also being you as well, and enjoying that time together. Can be really, really special. Okay, so I think I think a wee bit of discussion then, another breakout room time. That's quite good if you want to catch up again with anything else you've thought about. Maybe there are specific objects that you would use. I mean, I think we were talking about the Boys Brigade. If you're welcoming someone in, you always kind of think about things like that as well. Anything specific you might be able to consider for that.
Has anybody got any questions or anything at this point? Anything that they would like to say?
We were just kind of saying in our group that it can be tricky to find the right space, and to find the right space in church, and safe space, and also you've got to think about your safeguarding rules as well. Make sure you're not left on your own with a child and things. I was just sharing a time where I had a tricky situation with a boy who is very, very sensitive and had a bit of a meltdown. So I was quite prepared to wait with him, because he was having a meltdown. It was time to go back to church, and another lady came along and said, no, it's time to go back to church, so he needs to go back into church. But he was having a complete meltdown, and then it was just a difficult situation. So he then upset the other people. Lots of people in the church were upset because he was having a bit of a meltdown. So I did speak to Gran, and we made an arrangement that when all the other children came back into church, if he wasn't there and I myself or whoever was on duty didn't come back in, then Gran would know there was a problem, and Gran would then come out and we would sit together with them until we calmed down, So
that sounds like it was well managed then, from that point of view.
Well, not initially, but well, that's what we did too. After that worked well then afterwards.
And then kind of probably about how you model things as well, and how you model things if a child is distressed as well. And as hard as it is always to keep calm, it's like knowing the right thing to do, but having that sense as well, like you're saying, that child wasn't ready to go back in, so therefore trying to force it or trying to kind of push things would just kind of escalate things as well. And then some, the last kind of group or last kind of church group that was taking the parish that was involved in taking children to, I had a wee girl who we learned, not the first time, but we learned that we had to make sure that she didn't get access to any hymn books or leaflets or anything like that. It was quite common for them to leave books at the end of each row, so we had to get them all out of the way. And sometimes during the service, that you just see a book getting launched or chucked or something, and the piece would just carry on, and the parishioners would just kind of smile and carry on. So that helped me as a carer, as a supporter, as we're being from that point of view.
I'll share the screen, but just to say at the end, we've got a bit of space for time and chat, and also in the chat, Steve has shared Hug in a Bag, which is worth having a look at and sharing, because it's a brilliant wee resource that I'd recommend. But I will share our screen.
Okay, so I would say that moving on to communication, it's things that we've been talking about up to this point, are all coming into this. Communication, as you know, is one of the most important elements, and probably something just to think about it. Think about how you are, how you're feeling, how prepared you are, and in order to help assist a child's understanding of perhaps either the church, the kind of rituals in the church, or the stories that you're sharing that day, or the different activities that are going on, is to think about your communication with all of that. So we use something which we would call objects of reference. I hope I'm not patronising to people that know this already. So like I shared earlier on, like the cross, you may have someone who can make something like this for you. Just a small cross as your object of reference for going to church. And think about what I would call a transition object. And the child might have something they have at home that they bring to church. Certainly, I know when my children were young, I used to have little books, little prayer books and things like that I would take with me. The use of visuals as well. So I don't want to complicate things too much for you. It depends what you've got access to as well. But we use these kind of things, and you'll see them in the PowerPoint as well. We use I've got a lanyard that I keep around my neck, and I've got different visuals on it which help. Visuals really help a child with a processing difficulties to understand what you're asking them to do. They might not always hear everything you're saying. They might not be able to remember the process that you've asked them. So visuals, even visuals, you know, asking like you're going to sit, you're going to listen, you know, sit down on the floor, sit quietly. And so on, it kind of helps to remind a child that this is what's expected of them at that point, and it helps you to reduce your verbal instructions as well. If you use too many verbal instructions, then that can cause add to distress, and also it can cause confusion and misunderstanding. So use of visuals. Signing, you may have seen online, you may have seen on Facebook, you may use it yourself. We use Makaton signing in the sector that I'm in. So this is yes and this is no. God, kind of pointing up to heaven, and Jesus, but don't worry too much about that, because I'm going to give you the opportunity at the end to kind of get a chance to do a wee bit of signing and a wee bit of singing. I should maybe not spoil the surprise for you for that part of it, but I'll probably be on mute for that element of it. And keep your language in its part, but keeping your verbal language simple. Don't use too much language whatsoever. Just say, you might want to just say sit, listen, quiet time, and so on. But even anything you're explaining, just keep it simple. You might want to back it up with some symbols. If you have a child who's possibly a child with autism, an autistic child who's coming to one of your clubs who's maybe a bit more literate, is verbal and can read and write and so on, they might even appreciate just written, using words as well, kind of written schedule or tasks and things. But again, it's something to check with them if they're able to tell you, or with whoever they live with, whether it's their family or a carer, what's the best thing to support them with. And then again, something which you may already use in your own setting is about simplifying text. You probably have children's liturgy and simplifying text right down. So it's taking any passage and just taking out all the extraneous language that's in there and trying to make it as simple as you can think of. So I have to be honest with you, when I first started working with chaplaincy teams, I used to be a bit nervous about doing this, about kind of taking a Bible passage or a gospel passage or whatever it was they were asking me, and then just really, for me, it was like kind of like, you know, taking out lots of stuff in that. But actually what I found is, as I was going through it, that quite often you were getting to the very, very message, the clear meaning of that text, or that, you know, that gospel message in there. So it probably helps from an adult's point of view to kind of really think about that. But again, I'm sure you already use these things. So one of the examples I've got, I think is in the next slide, Jess, is the story of the lost sheep. Is that right? Yeah. So this is one that I've taken, and I have taken the gospel passage, and then I've taken lots of information out of it and tried to make it simple. This still seems quite long. It depends on the attention span of the child you're working from. So the reason why I wanted to do this is I've been so excited about these little knitted sheep that got a whole bag of them here. So I don't have 100 sheep or 99 sheep in them, but I did have a lady in the church. There was a lady who was housebound, and she very kindly knitted me all these sheets for whenever I'm able to share that story and I'm able to give the child a sheet that they can keep. And the great thing about it was it gave this lady was just delighted, and it's, although she wasn't able to come to church, the physical building, it just meant that she felt that she was still part of the church from that point of view. Some of the language I've used in this, I think in the first part there, when I talk about sinners, I was very reluctant to put in sinners, and I think it was the chaplain I was working with, he was kind of like, well, what's wrong with introducing that word? I was a wee bit unsure about it. But at the very end, I think it's when I've had to be very careful of the language I put in at the bottom. I said that God is happy. I can't quite see the bottom of my screen at the moment. There's something about making a wrong choice, which I had to be very careful. Yeah.
You've got God is like that. He is happy when one person is sorry for making a wrong choice.
Yeah. And the reason being that I had to avoid using bad, words like bad, naughty and so on, because these are real triggers for some children. Some children might have had traumatic experiences around the idea of bad behaviour. That may not be the case with the child that you're supporting, but it's something that just to kind of keep in mind that I knew that if I had put, I don't think I would call a child bad, but even naughty or whatever, if I'd said anything like that, even in this story, to try and make it child like this, I knew that this specific child, it would really trigger them for thinking about that. So just think through it all, think about how you can make it more simple, and what kind of objects you could have to tell a story and to share a story, and the other people who are not maybe actively involved in the children's ministry or anything like that, other people in the church who may be able to make that contribution to whatever you're doing. I always like to get everyone involved, I guess. So that was any kind of questions about that? I suppose, is there anything in the chat about that?
You can unmute. I'll pause the share for a second. Stop the share.
Right.
We had, oh, sorry.
No, go for it, Linda.
Oh, we had our Christingle service in Rutherglen just before Christmas, and we couldn't sing, obviously, but John had two very popular songs up on the big screen, and we did Makaton sign to the children's hymns, and it was lovely. It was actually really, really nice because we weren't allowed to sing, but we could sign to the songs, and it was lovely.